So, are you
Updating. Updated.
That's better. So, are you curious?
Welcome to the Curiosity Codex. I am your ardent enthusiast, Kyle Olson. We've reached the end of the shoot, but what happens when you call cut for the last time? Mandy Fabian takes us through the frantic last minutes on set, trying to get all the magic she needed before the clock struck 12. But then what? Now begins the post-production period. Music, sound, color, all of them require their own separate processes. But now we begin at the ending.
Chapter 14. The flow of what shows up.
Okay, so we talked last time about the shoot, and yes, all the way through. So now let's come to the end of the shoot. So, Do you remember what, the last day, the last shot, what it was and how it went?
I sure do. Because we were 2 days. So we had our schedule was such that we were ending on a Monday, May 17th. Okay. I will never forget it. And we were, it was Saturday, and I still think that we had not booked the actor that I wanted to play the Ranger in the movie. I wanted Matt Walsh. And I knew him because of a guy I did improv with in New York, was buddies with Matt back in Chicago, and they did improv together. And in fact, this buddy of mine took me to see Matt Walsh and Amy Poehler and Matt Besser do Upright. Oh, there was another guy too.
Upright Citizens Brigade.
Upright Citizens Brigade. Oh, that other guy's so sad right now that I was like, and then the other guy. Oh, man.
He still gets to have Upright Citizens Brigade on his resume. So,
no, I'm sure he's fine. But at least I hope he's fine. God bless you, wherever you are. But I went to the West Bank Theater in New York and saw them do their first show in New York, and then watched them build their theater and their school and everything. So anyway, I was a big fan of Matt, and I got to have dinner with him a couple times, and I knew him, and I really wanted him for this part. And I had talked to him about it, and he was like, absolutely. I'd be glad to do it. I love the script. I love this part. I'm in. So we had him, but we couldn't get the agent to confirm anything. Oh. And, we were being professionals, right?
Sure.
Trying to go through the agents and be like, okay, so he really wants to do this. And he said yes. And you've said yes. And so now we need to know, we need to get wardrobe and, and it just wasn't happening. We weren't hearing back from his agent. And I was like, okay. So I wrote him this email and I was like, listen, I want you to know I'm the kind of person I love you no matter what. You can't disappoint me. So if you're hoping that your agent is kind of being a filter for you, you can just tell me straight out. No offense, honestly. I'm happy. There's other people I can use, and I love you anyway. And no worries. You don't have to. But I would love to know if. And he was like, absolutely not. Here's where I am. I'll be there on Monday. Blah blah blah. So he just emailed me right back and said, no. I'm in. And so we just, his agent, I don't know what his agent was trying to do, but we were like, well, he's doing our movie, so thank you. And it just happened.
Enjoy your commission.
And here's how beautiful it was too. He literally was 15 minutes down the road shooting another movie. A movie that he had written that was up in the woods. And he was at a campground 15 minutes away, and they had just wrapped their project. And so we were like, will you come to our campground now and shoot this movie?
Yeah.
So our last day.
Could have hopped on a golf cart and just zipped right over.
I know. I think he did go home because that was Saturday. He went home for Sunday and then drove back up. God bless him. Back up to our camp on Monday. And we shot, we had we do a 12-hour day, and it was a night shoot. So we started with Matt. He arrived at 2 p.m. on that Monday, and we had 4 or 5 scenes to shoot with him. We got it all done.
Nice.
But the last half of it was night shoots. And of course, I hate night shoots, man. I get really tired, And it's so hard to do everything, right? You have to take so much time to light because you have to light all the trees. I think I've talked about this, right? And then on top of it, I had written these walk and talks to do.
So that's even more lighting because you got to light the path.
Like now that I know what I know, I never would have written this scene. I would have been like, the ranger balances on a rock while he talks to a very still Jessica. Like
in the bright sunlight.
Oh God, yes. Like, I totally would have done something that I know I could accomplish. So it was really interesting because we had to have a generator. We were out in the middle of the woods. The generator kept dying. I had given both actors lanterns and one of them died. I may have told you that already. So it was very crunchy leaves and acorns and things. Yeah. So it was loud as anything. And I was like, well, this is just a train wreck. I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to get. And I had planned for very little coverage because also it was just so hard to get anything that it was such a fingers crossed Hail Mary. So we get all the scenes somehow. He is super cool, man. Just very easygoing. He didn't panic at all. He delivered every time. He was graceful. Abby and he got along great. They had real fun chemistry. It was just really fun. And then at the end of the night, I don't even think the last shot was his. It was her. It was kind of perfect. The very last shot was her in the middle of the woods, lost, right?
Okay.
He's with her in the woods, and then spoiler alert, he leaves her and she is lost in the woods. And so it was this shot where we had to, it took forever. We had to back everybody out and we have her standing there. And then we had cleared the leaves so that it wouldn't make sound during her close-up. So then we had to go back and everybody had to run. This is because it's 2 a.m, right? We're almost getting to 12 hours and we just want the day to be done. Yeah. And we're going to go over 12 hours and I don't like to go over. And so I'm running and we're all running to try to get the leaves so it doesn't look like there's a weird hole in the ground. And I'm like, it's fine, just shoot it. No one's going to be looking at it,
Right. And if someone is, then clearly you've done something wrong in the filmmaking process beforehand.
Yeah. And I'm feeling horrible guilt. This is something as a director, I'm very different than other directors I've heard of, which are like, I'm going to shoot till I'm satisfied. And me, once it starts getting to that 12-hour, I start compromising because I'm like, I'm not abusing these people. Yeah. They've given me everything, it's good enough. And it is, by the way. It always is. I've never been like, ooh, I should have. So that was it. That was our last shot. And it was this weird, I felt like a baby deer on these unsteady legs, like, oh my God. And they're like, do you have anything else? And I said, nope. And they're like, you sure? The first AD looked at me, he was like, you sure? Because that's it. If you're done, are we done? And I was like, yes. The movie's in the can. And he was like, that's a wrap on Jess Plus None. And we were all like, what? And we all start crying and we're hugging each other. And it's so funny because before that, it's like, oh my God, it's 2 a.m. These poor people, I have to get everybody to bed and stop working. Well, then of course, it's 2 a.m. We're all jumping around and skipping and loading up all the furniture and getting the thing. We go back to the meal house where we all had everyone is having some drinks and dancing. Everyone's up till 4:30 in the morning anyway. There was this big celebration. I was like, what are you people doing? We stopped shooting. I worked you near to death. Why are we all? But everybody was so happy. And Matt, too, he stayed up with us. And we were all just having a good time talking.
Was most of the cast still there?
No, he was the
I was just saying by the end, they're usually peeling off, right? As they finish their stuff.
Yeah. There's actually some of their best work. Oh, God, this great scene. There's a wedding scene, and they just all brought it, man. They were so good. And it was the last day for a lot of them. So in the movie, they're saying goodbye to each other, but they were actually saying goodbye. It was the end of the shoot. So it was very emotional. It was really cool the way the first AD worked out. And I guess you have to do this on an indie. Sure. That the emotional spirit of the scene would probably match where we were in the schedule and where, how people were feeling. So we also, because I didn't want to abuse Matt, obviously. He was doing me a favor. So we tried to be very expeditious, very efficient with his time. And we prepped the heck out of that. I mean, of course, I was like, we're going to go from here to here. And I timed it out with their dialogue.
Yeah.
We had every shot completely pre-planned. And then all of our plans got blown because the generator wouldn't work. And we had to, they couldn't walk that. The Steadicam couldn't make that route. So we had to just go, all right, just walk from here to there. It was so crazy, but it worked out. It worked out.
I say that's the movie magic.
It was.
So,
and that's when you really rely on the actors to bring it, because in that moment, I can't direct performance.
Oh, right. Because you're just worried about just getting the actual anything, just getting some footage.
Yeah. At that point, if Matt Walsh is terrible, he's going to, there's nothing I can do to help him. Like I'm so swamped with the night shoot thing, you know? Oh my God. That's not entirely true. I did direct, but he was so great. He was so great. I was like, oh, I'm so lucky.
So when you got to then see it later, like you look at it and it turned out fine, or is it like you're like, it's good enough? I mean, like I know there's 1,000 compromises that come along with it, but do you think it would have been, better in your ideal version if the generator had worked and all the lights had worked and all that stuff, or do you think it was like, you know what, this is what it is?
Well, the good news was I didn't have I didn't have an elaborate. I wanted to be efficient. You know what I mean? So I didn't have an elaborate setup that I got disappointed. Like I didn't have a giant oneer or a drone shot or anything fancy.
Sure.
The problem was that I had done walk and talks and they were so difficult. Like that should be a pretty easy shot, but because we were on a hill and it was so loud and it was nighttime, that definitely, then all of a sudden you're like, well, you're walking through the woods and you're like, this is fine. This is good. This is very even ground. Well, then you're like, okay, now you as actors, you have to walk through this and talk and deliver your lines at the same time and not go too fast because the camera got and all of a sudden it felt like I had put everybody in the most dangerous situation in the world, So, there's that. But, oh, sorry. What did you ask me? I just totally.
you covered it. Yeah. You're
did
good.
I?
Okay. Okay. So then, all right. Once everything's done and you have the euphoria of you have completed your first film. So the shooting is done. How long is that honeymoon period in your head? Until you're home, you're unpacking, and all of a sudden you go, oh wait, I have to assemble this, I have to cut it. I was like did you give yourself like almost a vacation from after the shoot before, or were you like the next day, like right to after the unpacking, you were like right back to work? Because I know the thing is that people think when the movie is done shooting, then you're done, but nope. Now your next job starts.
No, you've been editing in your head, and there is a bit of a break. So the honeymoon period, though, I've said lasts maybe 3 minutes, because the minute your film is done and you're like, oh my God, I did it. I really did it. What a great experience. I'm so grateful. Thank you all. And then you're like, oh God. Oh, it's over. Oh no. Now what?
Hours and hours of footage.
Yeah. What if I didn't get it all? But then you have to let that go. But there's a bit of there's a letting go of you're still trying to direct things and wonder, should I?
Yeah.
And you're letting all that go because it's like, nope, it's over. Whatever's done is done. We'll make it work. Yeah. And for us, there was a lot of it was over, quote unquote, but we still had to unload. We still had to get all the stuff. We gave away a bunch of furniture and pictures and art to crew because we had bought it all for the movies, so we had to get rid of it somehow. So everybody got things, got to keep their wardrobe if they wanted it. And, we just dispersed all of it as best we could. We had to unload from the camp. And then I had to, get my house that had been set up for the movie back in order, try to figure out what to do with some of the furniture we bought for it was a sort of a process of that. And while I was doing that, the editor was working on the first cut.
Okay. And
the way he liked to work, and I don't know if I talked to you about this, but he liked to basically take your baby. Mm-hmm. There was a couple things he was cutting as we were shooting. So he would text me and say, hey, try to get a pickup of this. This is the only thing I'm noticing. He's been doing it so long that he can look at something and go, you're going to need this. You're going to want that.
Okay. So you're shooting everything digitally. So then at the end of the day, then somebody is just uploading all this footage to someplace?
No, it's too big. It's super high res stuff.
Oh, okay.
So we had to make runs into town for groceries and to take actors or people back and forth.
Yeah.
We had to exchange lenses. We had to, if gear went wrong. So there were reasons to drive back in. We have 2 children. Patrick was up with me at camp, but he did a lot. Oh my God, that man would drive like 6 hours in a day. It was crazy.
Wow.
Oh my God. And I think he liked it. I got to listen to Rush the whole time, but, or Genesis. But it was a lot. But he would take the shuttle drives to the assistant editor, who would then prep the footage, who would then get the footage to David, the editor, and he would.
Okay, so there's somebody in town that was.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
The assistant editor was in town, as was the editor. They were both in Los Angeles. And then we had a DIT who was on set, who was prepping footage from the camera into a computer and then onto a hard drive. And he was also pulling stills from the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we could sort of see what we had shot.
Okay. All right. So there's a even though it's 21st century, we're still delivering film.
Yeah, because
Just
the
cans are
Wi-Fi
smaller
signal up at that camp would not have been strong enough, and that kind of data, it's just easier on a hard drive. It's just, it's huge.
Yeah. And you were shooting in 4K?
A raw.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Which now movie screens generally project in 2K. Generally.
Right. Yeah.
So, if you're doing a low budget film, I did have somebody say, like, don't even bother with don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I think Netflix requires 4K or maybe even 8K now.
Wow.
There's something they do. Netflix does require it, but everybody else is like, look, whatever HD is fine.
Huh. Okay.
And like I said, most movie theaters are 2K. So if you have a real budget concerns and you don't want giant hard drives or whatever, then you can shoot on lower res stuff, but that then affects your ability later to color correct.
Oh, okay.
And so you can really manipulate footage when it's shot in what's called RAW. I'm still learning this, but it's essentially the sensor is so loaded with data that it's more manipulatable. It's like a depth of what you can, it's a lot like audio, right? Like there's a depth to what you can tinker with. If you get this much information, you could do a lot. But if you shoot in 2K, you have this much information, which is still a great amount of information for an indie film. It's just that this gives you flexibility. And we had the capacity. We had the hard drives and and we had the team to do it. So it wasn't too terrible.
So all the way along, then they've been getting, and your editor was, I don't know, we haven't talked much about your editor. So how did you get hooked up with this person, and what was that process like? Yeah,
I ended up having a few editors, but the first editor on it, he really did the first pass in a beautiful way. His name's David Cadron, and he did a couple of my short films. Okay. And we were friends. We worked on web therapy together.
Oh, okay.
So he was the editor and an executive producer on that. And we just liked each other's sensibility and had a really good time. And so I asked him if he would edit a short of mine, thinking there's no way. And he was like, yeah, because he really loves it. Like he really loves putting something together, and it's easy for him. And so he did Somebody's Mother, which is a short of mine that it was that beautiful experience that I also had with Jess Plus None, which is kind of me as a filmmaker handing him footage and going like, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, and then he hands me back a movie. Okay. I mean, he really puts it together. He puts temporary score. Okay. He edits the sound in a really nice way, kind of does a rough mix so that it's pristine sound-wise, so that you're not watching it going, ooh, 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 Yeah. His assembly is essentially a finished product. Wow. And it's very successful that he does that, because then you are not noticing the editing. You are going on this emotional ride. Yeah. Like that movie, Somebody's Mother, is a kind of bittersweet movie. And here I thought I had written a knee-slapping comedy, and he hands me my movie, and it's this beautiful, moving piece about motherhood. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, it's great, but I didn't know I shot that, So it's, he's great. So he did the first pass of it.
So what does that look like? I mean, like, is it extremely long? Like, is this like is it like a 3-hour sort of thing, or is it like literally had made the decisions already about, using this take and this and cutting it together? And
exactly that. He had made those decisions.
Okay.
They weren't final, obviously.
Well, sure.
But
But
and
it
was,
actually is, and there's not multiple takes of anything in there, anything for you.
no. It was long, though,
Sure.
because I think there were only a couple things that he didn't include. Because he wants me to be able to see it. He did his best version of every piece of what was in the script. And then I watched that, and that's where, you watch it and you go like, oh, I guess those 3 scenes are really similar and move the same story beat along in exactly the same way. And then you start to think about how you can adjust that stuff. So I think his first cut was probably like an hour 50, maybe.
Okay. And you're aiming for
hour and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, around that. I mean, I think we have an hour and 40 is
Okay.
where we ended up. But he and I had cut, we cut about 15 minutes out of that hour 50. Because once I saw it all together, I was like, oh my God. All right. I see some places where we can spruce this up and that can go and,
Okay. But after that, the first viewing of it,
yeah.
do you look at it and go, oh yeah, it's a movie, like it's really there? Or are you just thinking about the 1,000 different things you want to adjust?
He gave me very good advice, which was, he said, don't take notes, just watch it.
Okay.
And I think that's really important because if you take notes, we've talked about this with writing, right? You can notes something to death.
Yeah.
And movies, it's this really hard, weird thing, especially with comedy, because my God, just shaving an eighth of just one frame of something can make a difference. Moving things around, it feels like it makes this huge difference. And for a joke, it really can. But there's also 9,000 other micro decisions that you make that, it makes a difference. But maybe the other one was just as good. Like it's really, some of it's just preference at that point. So while the beginning of the movie really needed a rehaul, because again, he included everything from the script and it just didn't need to be there. That was the toughest part. The beginning felt very slow and I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And then right around midway, the movie found its legs and took off. And I was like, oh my God, you really could just not touch the back half of this.
Wow.
I mean, I did end up going in and tinkering because
sure.
it was my first movie. I wanted to really see all the footage. I loved the process of how, if I worked with David again, I'm sure I will, I would do that again because it's so great to have somebody else's fresh perspective, and someone else's talent, and it's wonderful. So I loved that part of the process. But for being a feature, in my first time feature, I also wanted to learn from all the shots I did. I wanted to see what I had in a scene. I wanted to test my ability to go, what if you started with this? And what if you did that? So the editing took a long time. David started the process. He got me to my first rough. We did some tinkering on it in the month of July, and then he had to go off and produce another movie at the end of July. So then we started the process of...
Before you move to the next person then, so what are those days like? So, is it literally like an 8-hour day of sitting and watching the footage? Or is it just like you have to go by when your schedule and his schedule align?
Well, yes to that second one.
Okay.
Yes, you have to go by when the schedules align.
Yeah.
And that depends on the style of working. So some editor, like my next editor really loved working like that, where we would get into something and we would spend 8 to 12 hours, not 12, but we would spend an 8-hour day easy because that got us in the flow. We like to try all the possibilities. That's how we got comfortable with things. David did not like to work that way. Okay. What he liked to do, which was also a great method, and I think it's, again, just a matter of preference, is he would send me the first reel, right? So he divided the reel into the film into 6 sections. Okay. And he would send me the first reel, which,
about 20 minutes.
Was like the first 15 minutes. Yeah. And I would give him notes. I would watch it and I would type notes and send that to him so that he could then make those notes and adjustments and I could come in and watch those notes and adjustments. So they would already have gone through a round of notes. And then if there were still things that needed to be changed again, then I would sit there with him and we would tweak things. But really, we did very little of that. It was a lot more of, I would suggest things, he would write it down. I'd suggest something, he'd write it down. And unless it was a quick fix, he would say, I'll take care of that later.
Okay. And then you'd come back and then those notes had been addressed and you got to see the sort of the recut of it. Okay. Yeah.
And again, part of the thing that, like, I think that's a great way to work. But me being a first-time filmmaker, first-time feature, you know, being where I was this being my baby, I really wanted to see all of the takes of something and try a couple things to see what I liked best. Again, that's largely way more about the process. You know, I think it does make it can make it a better movie, but it was also just part of my process. But that process that he was showing me was, this is how a professional movie is made, because you are off prepping your next movie, writing your next feature. You don't need to be sitting with me while I edit. And he's right. If you have like a language with somebody, if you start to mind meld with an editor, and you do, it's the craziest thing. You start to read each other's thoughts. Like it's, so that's how we did it. And then, like I said, he had to go do the next movie, but he got it into a really good spot to be able to pass it off to another editor. Now, we did run into something where the assistant editor that we had, not sure exactly.
What does an assistant editor do as opposed to the regular editor?
Well, an assistant editor, it depends on. So David usually works with an assistant editor. Not every editor does. There's a lot of indie people that do everything, soup to nuts. Sure. But he likes to have an assistant, and the assistant organizes the footage. So they basically follow the notes that the AD had done all the way through, or your script supervisor. Script supervisor, yep. Yeah, if you're lucky enough to have one, and then you were. So they have all the stuff on there, and then it's their job to then, when they say, oh, what was the... She wants to put in the shot where the guy crosses over to the left instead of from the right. And they go, oh, okay. And they bring it up and... Yep. Okay, got it. And they sync the audio. Okay. So they make dailies. Oh, yeah, that's true, because they're separate at that point. Okay. Right. You have footage, but you don't have any sound. Yeah. So they sync the audio and the camera reports, the sound reports. They look at all that. They put it all together. If, we've done a pickup of a scene 3 days later, they go find that footage and put it all together so that when they're going to build a scene, they have all the information they need. Okay. We somewhere along the way, and we're not sure how, and this happens, but there was a glitch or misfire. Something was done incorrectly. So what we had was our raw footage, which is this is a really technical thing. Do you want to hear about this part of it? Yeah. Okay. I'm sure there's plenty of tech nerds out there listening too who are like, oh, at last. Yeah. Stop talking about writing and give me some hard data here. Well, I'm going to it's going to sound like it's coming from my mouth, so good luck with it. But what it is there's the raw footage, all that data, right? You can cut on the actual raw footage with Adobe Premiere. It's really, really good at working with high quality, high res stuff. Okay. But it's slower. You have to have a really fast computer, and it's just a ton of data to render, and it's a little funky to work with. So generally what people do is they take these huge files that are your clips, the shots, right? And you make proxies. And the editing program will do it for you pretty much, but if you're working in Adobe Premiere, but they were not. They were working in an editing program called Avid. Oh, okay. Yep. So you know about Avid. I do. So we had this situation where our time code that was on the label of time code on the proxy footage did not match the raw footage. Oh. So David had edited on the proxies and built a whole movie with proxies. Now, what should happen is he can then hand that map. It's like if you wrote down this one goes from this shot goes from here to here, and this shot goes from here to here, and here's the audio that matches this, and here's where it is, right? And there's your assistant editor can go through and then just follow that map. Well, the new editor, right? So he's supposed to be able to give this map to the new editor. The editor can take that map, pull up his own hard drive with just the raw footage, unsynced, everything, right? And he should be able to put this map on that footage and make a movie happen, right?
Okay.
The map is the architecture of the movie, and you should just be able to like sort of cut and paste and go, now I want to take all this footage that's not assembled, put this map on it, and magically it will make the movie that appeared, right? But because we didn't have matching time codes, we had a time code issue, we were unable to do that. So I called everyone I knew. I called 3 people from Better Call Saul. I called people at Universal. I called post houses. I called every person I knew who ever knew anything about editing. And they were all like, oh, God.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That is not what you want to hear.
Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, you
It was
can't
like,
fix this.
oh, it's an easy fix. You just have to do the thing on the thing and you're
Yeah.
good to go. Like,
I was
no, they all
looking-
went,
I was so looking for the easy fix. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, come on. Like, this has to have happened before, right? Like,
yeah.
and it has, but
Yeah. But there's not a fix for it.
there's not an easy fix. So we ended up, it was really, really tricky, but we ended up just basically rebuilding the movie. We had to rebuild the movie. Not entirely. So there was one editor that we had, and then she had a scheduling conflict. So we couldn't, like, we had hired another editor who's great. I'd worked with her before on a short, and I was really excited. And then it turned out that, Patrick is shooting in Albuquerque, and all she can do is like nights and weekends. And nights and weekends are exactly the times when I have to be with my children. And so it was like this, oh no, so we were like, we got smart. We're like, this isn't going to work out. But she had done some really great stuff. And then I had another editor who I'd done a couple shorts with, and he took over, and he was available the same times I was. And so then he and I got to do the real, like, let's sit together for 8 to 10 hours a day and let's bang this out.
So not to get too much into the logistics and things, but are all these people along the way, are they being paid? I mean, I know it's an indie film, but like, you have a budget for an editor. So
Mhm.
like every one of them gets like for the amount of work they do, they get paid a certain amount.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious. I'm just, a lot of independent film is, can you do a thing for me? And some of it is like, we have a budget, we have this much money, and can you do it for this much money at this much time? I was just curious, sort of like, as you're sort of going on these dates, as you're trying to find another match that the two of you can work out your time and money.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have any big glitches or snafus in production, really. Nothing that wasn't manageable, nothing that took us way over budget. If anything,
That's great.
we had so many great miracles happen that we were practically under budget, like,
okay, nice.
I mean, we were not, don't get me wrong, we were not under budget,
you're not like
but
rolling in the dough, but yeah.
But it felt like it was all just kind of manageable. Like for what we had planned, it was like, oh, it's not bad. And then post is kind of where you're like, oh God, because you don't ask when you have a budget for a movie, you don't ask people to work for free. You ask them to work for way under their daily rate, and please. And there were people that volunteered and did things for free, which is kind of amazing.
That's kind of the only way that actually any artistic thing works.
Yeah, it's really helpful because I mean,
at some point you're going to need somebody to come in and paint a set, for the high school theater production. Like you just like,
and that's the really weird thing is like if you're it's hard, it's hard for people to get, like, if somebody says, okay, I'll take that money and then I'll do this job, and then they don't do the job, you're like, oh God, well, the money's gone. I mean, what are you going to do? So it's a little bit tricky, but then also at this point, you've come so far. I mean, honestly, that's when you can raise finishing funds and you can ask your investors for just a little bit extra to finish the movie. Like if you've come in pretty decently on budget and you have a good budget, like the only thing that, it maybe starts to cut into your budget because you have to have a budget for things like marketing.
Yeah.
If you are going to self-distribute or hire a press person for festivals or anything like that, but just having a movie that goes onto, if you're going to self-distribute, or even if it gets distributed, you still are going to have to spend money to get a good poster, and you have to get a good trailer cut. You have to have a website. You have to, there's and festivals are not free. You have to pay to submit to these festivals, and festivals are a huge part of indie film distribution strategy. You can also, like, if you want, I don't have that kind of movie, but I'm not looking for an Oscar run, but if I was going to,
that's very expensive.
Well, there's that, which is really expensive. But even like if, let's say it was like a Little Miss Sunshine or something, right? And I thought, this might be Oscar material. Like, you want to have a theatrical, right? You want to have a theatrical run. You want to go into an actual theater, and that costs money. So, and also, by the way, all of the stuff that you have to do, this is the really unsexy stuff, right? But we can talk about that later, because the editing is really the first chunk, where you get the picture lock, and you get some temporary score in there. You start to pick some music, songs that are going to go throughout the movie. That's where you start to put the big building blocks in, and then once that's done, then you can move on to the next phase, which is sound mixing. Okay. So that's dialogue editing and making sure there's no overlapping things, and that everything you can hear everything. Okay.
This would be where you find out if you need ADR.
Yes.
Okay.
Additional dialogue recording.
That's right.
Yes. That's where you figure out, here's where I think we need it, have it. I'm going to be scheduling actors for ADR in the next couple weeks. Okay. Because that's where we are on Just Plus None. Okay. And then, so there's sound mix, and then there's color correction, which I'm still learning that. My God, I thank God for DPs who are good at it, because I'm so grateful when I have a DP that's like, really like, I want to do the color. I'm like, okay, good. Because you know how. And, I'm going to be like, should his hair be that blue? I don't know. Like, it's really.
It's like going to the optometrist. Better like this or like this? Like this or like this? And you're like, yes.
Like, I wish I was legitimately colorblind, because then I could just say, no, you shouldn't let me do it. Because I only know what I like, but I can't say how or what. I'm learning. I do like to be in on it, because I like to know those things. Yeah. But it's still a process that I'm learning. So DPs generally will help with the color correction, and then there's the score, right? We've got to score the thing. So I have a composer who's working on, I think he's about 2/3 of the way done with the movie now. So, you're doing all of these things simultaneously. Oh, and I'm also a genius who wrote a VFX animals into my movie.
Oh, okay.
Oh God. And the whole
you have to
first
find a decent but affordable VFX house that can add a deer or
I don't have a house.
Animals.
I don't have a house. I have a guy who's a genius.
Okay.
His name's Yoshi, and he did the VFX on Driver X. Okay. And I talked to him just to be like, is this something that would even interest you? And could you? And he was like, absolutely. He had such a good experience on Driver X. He came up, he was an extra. He was in the wedding scene of the movie. Like, he came up and on set when we were shooting everything and said, you got to do it like this, and this will help me, this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
amazing.
need plates, all that kind of stuff.
And I hate to say it, but I think he created more work for himself, because he'd be standing there and I'd be like, oh no, that gate's closed. He'll go, I can take that out. And you're sitting there going, yeah, but, oh, okay. Like, so everything, you're like, oh, Yoshi, you'll put extra trees there. No, we didn't rely on it too heavily, but the poor guy, now it's like, well, here's all that stuff you said you were going to do.
So you need to have somebody along with just to make notes of all the stuff that he said he can do. All right, I'll add that to the list.
Yeah.
There you go, Yoshi.
Oh God, no, he's really good. He's really, really good. So, but that takes time. Yeah. It takes a huge amount of time, because everybody has full-time jobs, you know, and families. Yeah. And so it's a real labor of love, and it's hard. It is so much harder than the production part of it, because to me, the production is like this contained, intense package, where we're all together. You see the people you're working with, you have a time frame, you've got daily goals that you meet, and it's an intense, and then you're done. And then, post is sort of like, you kind of have to get to it when you can get to it. You never see any of the people. And, and then your life takes over, right? So you sort of like, oh, I only talked to him 2 days ago. Meanwhile, you're like, oh my God, that was 18 days ago. Right? And
So do you have just like a crazy file thing of like who's doing what and where they're at in it? And
it's in my brain.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
And I have a post-production supervisor, but, also it's like,
Doing
it's
other
a
things,
really weird, where everyone's sort of, it's a really weird, it's very hard to navigate. And I have only ever done shorts, and shorts are so easy. I mean,
Comparatively, I can see.
Here's my secret sauce for shorts, right? Well, David always puts this amazing temporary score under whatever, right? So he basically designs this thing. I hand it off to a composer and go, just, do what you can.
Do that.
I like this. This is the idea. But I mean, I have such talented musician friends. It's so much easier to come up with something brilliant when you only have to do it for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, as opposed to, whatever it's going to be, 60 minutes of music. I don't know what as a percentage of the movie. I don't know how much is going to be scored, but a lot.
Well, it underscores dramatic things. It helps with comedy. It's this really odd. I mean, that's been one of the most interesting parts of the process is just figuring out how music plays a part when it feels too much, when it is. And it's so funny. It's like not even whether or not music is there. It's the kind of music, right?
Yeah.
It's whether you're doing something that's like kind of sparse and just sounds, or whether you're you can put two different pieces. We learned this because we were trying to put some temp score into some of it, and we were just, beating our heads against the wall going like, oh my God, you can ruin a perfectly good choice with the wrong score.
Yeah.
Well, and I am such a music nut, like I was a songwriter. I've used a bunch of my songs. That's how I know a bunch of musicians
it's
too.
It's easy to get approval.
Well, yeah,
You just ask and
paperwork
you say yes.
was easy. Yeah. But I was really happy because I have really talented musician friends and I got to use their songs.
Nice.
2 of the songs are from a woman who stars in the movie, actually.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really fun,
I guess so because you're a musician and you've written all this stuff, you had that language you could speak to that a little bit more. I've had difficulty working with other people in disciplines I don't know because I don't know how to convey what I want through that, except comparing it to, can you make it be like this? Which is like, I don't want to do, but that's the hardest part I've had collaborating with people outside of my disciplines.
But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's actually a really great way to
Sometimes
communicate.
it's not gone well.
Well, you shouldn't say to an actor,
Oh,
no!
not
Read it like
actor,
this. But
actor, I could, that language I can speak because I've tread a couple of boards myself. But when I get into design or music, when it's something I cannot do, I have sometimes difficulty figuring out the language to speak to convey that. And there's almost like there's lost in translation like that. I just can't seem to get it across, and it gets to the point where they're just like, I don't know what you want, man.
Well, I don't
know how to say it.
But but to your point, like I think that's exactly how you do it. Like I was so grateful, and I knew I had hired, the right people when I had made all these lookbooks, right?
Okay.
So when wardrobe and production design, and when they were giving me visuals of what they were thinking, and it was pictures like could have been right off of my lookbook, out of my thing, that's when I knew we were on the same wavelength. Music wise, the temp score is really, obviously we're not like rip it off, but it is meant as a guideline because this is the idea. And to be able to say, do you hear how this has heavy bass in it? I don't like that. Or this feels too manufactured. I would want something a little more raw and acoustic. Like, but I couldn't just say, I am not skilled enough to go, I think you should start with an oboe. And then, and also, by the way, that would be insulting on some level. Like that's the thing you have to find is you go, well, I have a vision, but I also want to allow that I'm surrounding myself with really talented people. So let's see what they are bringing to it as well.
So are you getting a full, well, I guess not full orchestra, but like orchestral, like that there's a dozen musicians in this little group, or is it mostly just like acoustic guitar?
So
how big is the score that you're getting?
He is still working on it.
Okay.
And he's finding his way in it, and I'm respecting that process. I'm also respecting the fact that even though I said to him, I was like, let me know, we'll find musicians in LA, we can figure something out. But he does all the music he does podcasts and things with his wife. They have this beautiful podcast for kids, a storytelling podcast called Circle Round, and another one called Who, When, Wow. And I met him because he was a sound designer. I think he was a sound designer for a play I did. And then he was the very first production sound mixer on a movie that I did, on my very first short film. So I've known him for a long time, and he's just he's a genius, right? And so I know he's playing all the instruments because he can. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. But I think that's like how he works, it's like how he wants to work. So that's what he's doing. I have not heard any of it yet. He wants to, as the editor did, he wants to present it, and then I will hear it, and it's either going to be like, oh, genius, done, or it will be like, okay, now let's roll back some things. Let's take that piece out. Let's put that there. Let's take that idea and riff on that. It's risky, I think, because I don't know. I don't know how you give notes on an entire feature. But this, but also because I'm new at this, and I want to respect people's process, and I don't know. I'm like,
wow.
Maybe I might get the best thing ever. And if so, then won't that be such a great story to tell on stage? Be like, what we did that's really special? He just banged it out and I said yes. It would be an awesome story to tell from the indie spirit stage, but who knows? That might be a dreamy ideal that doesn't work at all, or it might be like, yes, I would do that for any of my movies,
It's, man, I'm just putting myself in your headspace in terms of it's your movie that
Yes.
you wrote and you directed, and now you've gotten to the point where you've had to give up all of this and just hope it works out. Wow.
Yes and no. Yes, in that you have to give, because otherwise, why would people do it? I don't know. For me, I want everyone to enjoy the experience as much as I do. That's the most important thing. I don't care
Rare
if you
and beautiful.
Well, it
I
is
wish
beautiful.
more collaborators would have that spirit.
I feel very lucky. I think I wrote a great script, and I think we have a special movie, because the guys who are working on it are really like, hey, I have really enjoyed this, which is great. That's what you want. For me, that's the only payoff. Especially if you're not getting your normal rate, oh my God, you should get something out of it. And it should be a beautiful creative process for you. That said, and I think I benefit from that. Part of being a director is not, I'm going to get exactly what I want, and I'm going to get into your headspace so that you do exactly what I think you should do. It's not that. It's directing energy. It's directing the flow of what shows up and using it to the best advantage for the project. So it's not me and my vision. Ultimately, I have to make the decisions about what I think is best for the project. But that has to come. I can't do this alone. It came from the actors. It comes from the crew. It will come from these post guys who are doing their best work. And then I will, live with it, shape it, look at it, and either go, that's good enough, or that needs to be better, or that's not going to work as is, or if we make it better and we have to do something else. It's this weird leap of faith, and also a completely logical, you just make the next decision until all the decisions are done. And it's decision after decision after decision. Because, you make all these decisions, and then you're like, oh my God, we have a whole movie together. Yay. And we'll clink one glass of champagne, and then we'll go, all right,
now the next thing.
Which festivals, and what are the deliverables for each festival? And if we do sell it to Hulu, we need this. And if we sell it to Netflix, we need this. And these are all the sales agents, and this is the distributor. And this is it's never ending. All of it, the promotion, everything. So it's a ride. And for me, the payoff, it will be when I am standing in a theater with 300 to 500 people and they're laughing. And I got to tell you, the minute that happens, I'll do anything for this movie for the next 20 years.
Oh, please don't let it be 20 years before people can see this.
Oh, no. No,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, after people
let
have
it have
seen
a long
it.
life. Let it have legs.
Yes.
Let it be something that there'll be an anniversary, whatever the 4K disc in 10 years is.
So one of the things that the feedback that I got that really helped. Oh, I had screenings along the way. By the way, that is something that I did because it was a comedy, because I wanted to because I wanted to have the broadest audience possible. I had, really different kinds of people. I had like arty film people. I had I know nothing about the entertainment business and I might watch Nora Ephron movies. I had I only like sci-fi. I only like horror. I had people, who were from Texas and this is not their kind of movie and these are not their people, but they loved it, and they didn't tell me they loved it. It was there are people that I thought for sure they would hate the movie. And then there are also people that I thought for sure would love it. And were kind of maybe not as excited as I thought they would be. So,
what is, so it's weird to me because I always think of even the post process of of doing things that it's incremental and that okay, so now we have picture lock. Okay, now we have color correction. Now we have sound, but that's not the case. They're all happening at the same time. So you have the incomplete version of the movie essentially out there that will sort of fuse together at some point into a final thing. It's edited, right? It's locked in terms of that.
Picture lock has to happen first.
All the other stuff is you're getting together. So what state are people seeing the movie in when you're having these screenings and showing them?
They're seeing it with the temporary color, temporary sound mix that the editor has done, right? So it's not sloppy. It should be as unbumpy as the editor can possibly make it. And that is why you put temp score. That's why you put sound effects of birds chirping in the forest. And you put ADR in there as best you can. You put all the sounds and all the things that people are gonna, and then for VFX, you put text on the screen that says, this is where a bunny's going to be. This is where an owl is going to be. Okay. This is, if it has something to do with the story, obviously. For texting and things, you put up what the text reads and who's writing it, and you do that stuff to sort of give the viewer an idea of what is supposed to be there. And their brains do the rest of the work. But it feels like a movie. They take the ride. So then hopefully it's even better once you have the actual VFX and the actual score and the actual color, because hopefully all of those things are only going to make the movie better. Yeah.
So then what kind of feedback are you looking for then when you do that stuff? Is everything just anything notes, or are you looking for commonalities?
That's interesting. Well, first of all, because it's a comedy, I'm listening to where people are laughing.
Absolutely.
I get a feel for, I knew from the first screening that the beginning wasn't working. People, and by the way, this could have just been one screening, but we had a screening where they were not on the main character's side.
Okay.
At all. And not all of them. Some people were like, I thought she was great. So it's interesting because I had one screening where they were like, oh my God, she's adorable. It's amazing. Submit it to Sundance this minute or I'll never forgive you, as is. And you can do that, by the way. You can submit things with a rough.
Oh, can you?
With a temp. You can. Wow. You can.
Okay.
Yeah. It just has to be sort of close to what will actually be in the thing. And then I had people who were like, oh my God, I didn't want to spend another minute with her. But that's only because I realized when I watched it again, see, you get notes and your first instinct is like, what are you, crazy? And then you really consider the note and you go, oh, well, I can see it that way. So then for me, the balance is, well, I don't want to sacrifice what I love about this, but I have to ask myself, what was my intention? What was I intending the audience to feel? So was I intending them to feel uncomfortable? Was I intending for them to dislike her? Like what was my intention, and why did I not accomplish that? And so then I take what they're feeling and thinking, and I look and I go, oh, well, like in the beginning of the movie, it's a scene that is uncomfortable, but it's meant to be funny. And also you're meant to think one thing and then there's a twist, right? And I had not done the right job of setting it up as, hey, like, this is going to be a fun ride, folks. Come with me. I sort of let it be a little awkward because I like awkward. And that's well and good if I'm only wanting my movie to appeal to people who love like really awkward beginnings to movies, right? But I don't want that because there's plenty of awkward in my movie. But I want them to know I want to win people over first and then let them watch this story unfold. So I had to sacrifice a little bit of the awkward in the beginning, but ultimately I got something that is a little bit more like it hands it to people in a way that goes, you're in good hands. Come with me. It's going to be awkward. This is going to make you feel weird things, but like just come with me a little bit. And so I had to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, so that's a big learning thing from being the writer to the director, because that means that I would imagine is that your opening scene is no longer your opening scene.
It is.
It is, but you just had to adjust.
It's the way I cut it. I added a song underneath it. I made it more playful. I took some of the visuals out and added audio.
Oh, interesting.
To make it the thing that is awkward for people now lives in their brain. And I also made it a very clear joke because the truth is if people were uncomfortable, then they don't feel comfortable laughing, right? I've already lost them if they're going, oh no, I don't want to see that. It has to be a really clear joke. And I didn't have a very clear joke. And so I added the music. I added like comic beats. I was like, take this, put this here, comic beat. And now this place that I thought was hysterically funny, but nobody else was laughing at, we built up to that moment. So now everybody laughs.
Wow.
But the way that I had it that I just thought was hilariously funny didn't work for everybody. And now it does. And so now that's my first laugh. And that's in the first 2 minutes of the movie.
And that's just collaboration with your editor. That's just a little more of this, a little less of that, and tweaking until you get to the point where...
Oh, God.
Was that the scene you think you spent the most time adjusting?
Yeah.
I'd say it may be the most important thing because if you don't have them right at the start...
It is.
That's
and I
the
will
walkout
say,
factor.
The DP was she was like, because we shot the first scenes first. And she was really like, oh, is there any way we can shoot the first scenes at the end? And I didn't know because I hadn't done a movie. I was like, no, and there really wasn't because of schedule. We tried to make it happen, but it just couldn't. So we had to do it chronologically. And I was thinking like a director, right? I'm like, that's better for the movie. They start off, the more chronologically they can do their performance, the easier it'll be for them. But it is true, man, that the opening of a movie is so specific and tough. It is the thing you have to spend the most time on. It really is.
Yeah, I wish more filmmakers would, because there's so many movies that even have come out that are still good that I'm like, oh man, like you don't have me until the first, until like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Like I every time I see text on screen as your first shot, like the movie starts and it's just like whatever it is, usually black with what a color text. I'm like, ooh, strike one. Like I'm already like, dude, you're going to make me read? I didn't come here to read. Like I'm here to see a movie. Like show me something. Like all of this information is much better if people are talking about it to each other. Why are you making me read a prologue?
Yeah.
Second of all, if someone then starts reading me the things that are on screen, strike two. Like put it up on screen, fine, I'll read it. But then if there's a character reading it, why am I reading it along with the character?
That's a good point.
No,
Yeah.
like I'm here. I paid my money. I have my popcorn. I'm take me into your world. Like,
yeah.
So there's a lot of, I think there probably could be interesting conversation about bad beginnings of good movies.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Well, and it's so tricky too, because, some of the people that gave me notes, like I said, they're different than I am. They like different things, So you really have to find that balance of like, do I change this to try to please a broader spectrum of people? Or do I keep this like 100% authentic, my
I'm gonna
voice?
find my audience.
Yeah.
I'm not here for everyone. I'm here for the smart ones.
Yeah. So and you're like afraid. You go like, well, if I water it down, maybe I won't get those people. Maybe I lose those people over there that really were my people. And maybe I never quite get to these people. But, that's also a thing where you go, that's where your gut, people asked me a few questions that were like, well, what's your reason behind that choice? Right. Like there was a thing, it's funny, there was a thing at the beginning. What is your intention? Right. And I was like, well, I wanted to make them laugh. I wanted them to feel, I want them to feel sorry for this girl. And like, I want them to have empathy for her, but I also want them to have a good time and know that like, she's going to do things this whole movie that's going to make you go, oh God, oh no. Like, but in a funny way, not in a sad way. And so I had to set that up right away so that they would go, okay, she makes me laugh. I'll watch her struggle through this, And at the end, I had another bit where I had done this thing where I wanted a surprise, like kind of a twist. The writer in me had wanted this like, will she or won't she go back to the wedding, And it's very clear. She goes back. I mean, the car physically turns around and goes back. But because I, as the writer, had done, and even the director had done this like kind of clever thing of, and it was funny because it was really bumping people. They were having a really hard time. And I'm like, are you telling me you still don't know whether she goes back, or you're still like mad at her for not going back, even though you very clearly see her go back? And they couldn't let go of the thought that she wouldn't go back made them like, ugh, And so I had to rethink and ask myself like, okay, is that the writer trying to play a cute little trick? Or is that a story point that is being driven by character in that moment? Is there really a moment where she's not going to go back? And then I made the decision to go, no, there's not a moment where she's not going to go back. So I need to fix that. And I fixed it.
As going in as the screenwriter then and the director, then when you're in the editing thing, do you see things where like, oh, I wish I'd written a scene where this happened? Or is it, or are you sort of so far down the line that you're just like, I'm working with what I have? Like, are you already have mentally shifted to that point?
You've already shifted. If anything, you're not, you're not. At least for me, it depends on what people are doing, what kind of movie it is. For me, we had a specific location with specific people at a specific time. There was no, I'm going to write anything additional. And the thought of, I wish I had written something or other doesn't really help. Like there's maybe a line I would think, oh, I wish I'd gotten her saying that. But that's only to connect something. Like, to be honest, the movie that I have is the movie that I wrote. And I did several table reads. What I did notice was that that while the characters do talk in different voices, they're clear character voices and they have clear paths. There's a rhythm to my comedy that I tend to do. I tend to end the scene with a but, and I had, so that's something that I noticed. I was like, oh, maybe I want to try to be more aware of not writing the same rhythm for scenes over and over again. So when I listen next time to the next table read, I'll be like, that one, those all three are exactly the same length and they have the same button style of going out, you know?
Okay. Well, I'll say, just be careful because there's only one Mandy Fabian. And, you know, there's 100 people that can do the job, but like only you can do that. So, you know, just make sure you don't smooth off so much of it that then you end up sounding like everybody else because nobody wants that.
Well, and at the end of the day, and this is what I tell people when they're like, how do you make something funny? How do you know when it's funny? You know? And they only ask me that because I do comedy, not because they think I'm so funny. But you know what I mean? They're like, but how do you do that? And honestly, I'm like, it's what makes me laugh. It's what makes me feel good. Like, I cannot possibly make anything that everybody's going to like. And there's been a real freedom to that in this process. It's been a painful process because, of course, you know, I want everybody to love it and rave about it. And I want it to go to Sundance and I want it to be the next Coda. And, you know, it's not going to be. I wrote a movie about a chronic masturbator. So, you know, but it's heartfelt and it's, you know, it's a really great movie. I knew that I wanted people to feel like they had spent time, like they were friends with all of these college friends. I wanted them to feel like they had gone to this wedding as a guest and had watched all of this unfold. And then when the movie was over, I wanted them to want to go back and spend time with them. And at my last screening, a woman, you know, just volunteered. She was like, you know what? I just want to go back and spend time with those people. And I was like, mission accomplished.
And that's where we're going to stop the conversation for today. If you'd like to hear more of Mandy's voice, she's got her very own podcast. It's called The Mand Cave, hosted in collaboration with her friend, Mandy Kaplan. You'll find it wherever the finest podcasts are found. Thanks so much for listening. This has been the latest chapter in the Curiosity Codex, but there are many pages left to decipher. We're part of the True Story FM family of podcasts. Find out more about us at truestory.fm. Our theme music is Intrusion by Severed Personality, aka Kevin MacLeod. The voice of the Codex is Kara Gallo, and my name is Kyle Olson.
The Codex is closed. For now.